Hello, and welcome back to another episode. I'm Jackie, and today we are talking about the power of reading. We'll explore the science behind how it shapes the brain and why it is such a great learning tool for advanced English learners. I'm also excited to share with you 5 of my favorite classic novels that are perfect for B2 and C1 level students. Hopefully, you'll walk away from this episode feeling inspired to pick up a book and get lost in a great story. And just a reminder that you can access the annotated transcript for this episode on my website, jackieteachesenglish.com, so you can always listen, read along, and note down interesting vocabulary and phrases. So without further ado, let's dive in. Did you know that reading isn't natural? It's true. When we consider language to be natural, it seems very rational to assume that reading, written language, must also be. But it isn't. We do not innately have the ability to read. Something that is innate is a characteristic you are born with, and that comes naturally. Reading isn't an innate ability. Instead, it's something that we train our brain to do over many years. And the best bit is that it actually activates your brain and alters its structure and connectivity. In fact, reading is a whole brain process. All 4 lobes of the cortex are actively being used in order to take in written letters and words and transform them into meaning. It has even been proven that reading can create a physical response. Have you ever been reading something that makes you feel sick to your stomach? Perhaps you are reading a passage where a character is in great distress or anxiety, and you actually feel it in your gut. In addition to an emotional response, reading can actually trigger feelings of nausea, discomfort, and pain. I just think that's so incredible. The human imagination is a wonderful thing, and reading can literally transport you to different worlds. And if that isn't enough to convince you, studies also show that people who read for at least 30 minutes a day actually live longer than those who never read. In the study, readers on average were found to live nearly 2 years longer than non-readers. This boiled down to a couple of key cognitive processes that promote longevity. The idiom to boil down means to reduce information down to its most important parts. This is a great phrase to use when you want to summarize something or just give the highlights. So the first big benefit of reading is the amount of connections the brain must make, not only within the novel itself, but also with the outside world. Readers are constantly having to make sense of the story they find themselves immersed in, and often draw parallels between the book's context and experience in their daily life. If you draw a parallel, you indicate the ways in which 2 different things are similar. These critical thinking skills help keep the brain active and young, thus promoting a long life. Additionally, reading fiction fosters empathy, emotional intelligence, and better social skills, which, of course, help us to survive longer. After all, we are social creatures, and the ability to collaborate with others and be part of a community is essential for healthy brain function. Now, I know that many of you listening will already be big bookworms like myself. It's true that people who study languages do often gravitate towards literature, but not always. And it's one thing to read in your own language, but quite another to read something in a foreign language. If your brain was activated before, it's in overdrive when reading in a language other than your own. By overdrive, I mean that the brain is in a state of great activity and hard work. And sometimes our brain doesn't really want to have to go into overdrive. Sometimes we want to read for the pleasure of reading. Or maybe for us, it's a relaxing activity, a way to switch off from the stress of a busy working day and just enjoy a bit of escapism. But this is why reading in English is so important if you are an advanced learner. One of the biggest challenges that happens around C1 level is that English stops feeling like a set of separate pieces. It's no longer a buffet table of individual plates of vocabulary, grammar, and phonics. The fact of the matter is, English is now a continuous stream, and it can be difficult to navigate. But reading supports this shift. When you read regularly in English, you start to internalize the language. Not consciously or analytically, but rather organically. Through reading, you build your awareness for the structure and rhythm of sentences. You pay attention to where writers slow down and speed up, how ideas unfold, and how they play with words. You start to develop an instinct for how the choice of words and sentence structure can affect tone and subtle meanings. All of this good stuff doesn't just happen. We know that writers are very skilled at what they do. When you read a book, you are spending time with language that has been carefully, lovingly, meticulously constructed. You are absorbing how humor, intimacy, irony, or distance and warmth are expressed intentionally. And the best bit? All of that feeds back into how you speak and how you listen. You are collecting language and absorbing patterns, all while enjoying a captivating story. This is why I encourage you to fight against that initial desire to just read something in your own language because it will be easier. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing, by the way. You're not under any time pressure. It's not a race to the finish line. A few pages a day are enough to get started. In a moment, I will share 5 of my favorite novels that are great for advanced learners of English. I've chosen these because they are regarded as classics, frequently taught across high schools in the United States, and widely considered truly great literature that is worth our time, both through literary merit and the important social context that serves as their backdrop. The first one on my list is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Voted as one of the best books of the 20th century, this gripping, coming-of-age tale, told from the perspective of a young girl, depicts the prejudice and inequality of the American South in the 1930s. Although the narrator is a child, the book deals with adult themes including justice, morality, racism, and social inequality. And here's why this is a great book to read as an advanced English learner. The language is very readable while still being rich. The author writes clearly and has a flair for storytelling, a flair being a special ability or talent. You won't be bogged down by overly long or complicated sentences, and instead will be able to concentrate on the depth and narrative flow. Second on my list is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. First published in 1925, this is the quintessential novel of the Jazz Age. Quintessential simply means being a perfect example of something. A story of romance, lavish parties, gin and jazz. This is a beautifully crafted tale of America in the Roaring '20s. The language of The Great Gatsby is more poetic, and it uses more metaphors, which does make it a slightly challenging but rewarding read. It is a wonderful study into how the author creates atmosphere with his choice of words. As an advanced reader, you can experience a more artistic and expressive side of English through this novel. Third up is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Written in 1813, the language will feel older and therefore more challenging, but don't let that discourage you. This book has charmed readers for more than 2 centuries with its witty and intelligent heroine and insights into the delights and frustrations of the social conventions of the time. Jane Austen's style is naturally more formal, but it's also very precise and clear. In this story, the characters rarely say what they mean, and you often need to read in between the lines. As an advanced reader, you will develop your instinct for polite indirectness, subtle humor, and social nuance, and this is certainly something to be proud of. Fourth on the list is 1984 by George Orwell. This classic dystopian novel deals with big issues that are still relevant today, including authoritarianism, freedom of speech, individuality, and rebellion. Why does it make my recommended list for advanced English learners? Well, first off, it's just an excellent book and a very important story to read if you haven't already. Secondly, It may discuss very heavy and complicated topics, but it does so in quite a direct way. Readers are exposed to very abstract ideas, but Orwell's use of controlled and measured English makes it very digestible. Additionally, you will pick up fantastic words related to society, government, authority, and ideology, which are often topics reserved for advanced levels. Last but not least, my fifth choice for today's episode is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. If you've listened to my earlier episodes on J.R.R. Tolkien, you will know that I'm a big fan of all of his works. And The Hobbit really started it all. The Hobbit is a fantasy novel, but is very accessible. Tolkien is a true craftsman with the English language, and his sentences are very well structured. He layers ideas on top of each other, and his descriptions unfold gently. You will come across a rich vocabulary related to nature, emotion, and atmosphere. And, most importantly, it is impossible to not fall in love with the characters. When you care about a story, you're much more likely to persevere even when the language is challenging at times. If you persevere at something, you stick with it, you continue with it, even when it's tough. And that brings me to the last thing I'd like to say. If you don't already know, I have recently launched a book club course for advanced English learners, and our first book is going to be none other than The Hobbit. If you're interested, you can find more information in the description and on my website, JackieTeachesEnglish.com. So there you have it. 5 fantastic and relatively short classic novels that you can pick up and start reading today to take your English to the next level. And if you have already read one or more of these from the list, I'd love to know what you thought. You can let me know in the comments. And if you found this episode useful, please consider subscribing and giving me a rating in your podcast app. This really helps me reach more English learners like yourself. Have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and I'll see you next time. Bye!